6 months ago, I sat in a penthouse overlooking the city, surrounded by people who called themselves my family. Not the family I was born into, the family I'd earned. Through a storm. Through a choice I almost didn't make. But to understand how a broken man ended up there, you need to go back to the night when everything changed. The night I almost became the 18th person to close my door. Sound, doorbell cutting through storm, thunder crack, it was February 14th, Valentine's Day. Not that it mattered to me anymore. I sat at my kitchen table, the overhead light flickering like it was deciding whether to give up entirely, a feeling I knew intimately. In my hands, a piece of paper glowed with angry red letters, final notice. Electricity. They'd already shut off the gas last month. My name is Marcus Reed. 38 years old. Once upon a time, I was somebody. Had a construction company, a house with a 2-car garage, a wife I thought would be my forever, and 2 kids who made every mistake I'd ever made worth it. Now I was a man holding a bill I couldn't pay, sitting in a duplex that smelled like old carpet and defeat, listening to a storm try to tear the world apart outside. The clock on the microwave, the one thing still working in this kitchen, glowed 9:43 p.m. And then the doorbell rang. Pause, 2 seconds, in this neighborhood, doorbells after dark meant 3 things: cops, trouble, or trouble that would soon need cops. I'd learned that the hard way in my first month here. Learned to keep my head down, my door locked, my business my own. I didn't move at first. Just stared at that bill like if I focused hard enough, the numbers might rearrange themselves into something survivable. The bell rang again. More urgent this time. Thunder, rain intensifies, something in me, some instinct I thought I'd lost along with everything else, made me stand up. My body moved before my brain could talk me out of it, crossing the worn linoleum floor toward the front door. Through the peephole, I saw them. 2 young women, couldn't have been more than early 20s, huddled together on my porch like abandoned children. The rain was coming down sideways, absolutely punishing, and they were soaked through. Their hair hung in wet ropes around their faces. They were shaking. But here's what stopped me cold, the way they held each other. Not like friends. Like sisters. Like family. Like the way my daughter, Zoe, used to hold on to her brother, Caleb, during thunderstorms when they were little. Emotional shift, softer, remembering, God, I missed them. Zoe was 7 now. Caleb had just turned 9. They lived in Denver with their mother, my ex-wife Shanice, and her new husband, a man who got to tuck them in every night, who got to be there for the everyday magic I'd traded away for overtime and ambition. I'd given up being their everyday dad to become their someday dad. Someday, when the business was stable. Someday, when we'd made it. Someday, when I'd built them a future they could be proud of. Shanice got tired of someday. I couldn't even blame her. Pause, breath, now I saw them twice a year if I could afford the flights. Summer and Christmas. This summer was looking doubtful. The custody lawyer had bled me dry, and the business partner who'd forced me out had made sure I'd never work in commercial construction again. Blackballed. That's what they call it when a black man stands up for himself and loses everything for it. Tone shift, back to present, decisive, so when I looked through that peephole and saw those 2 young women shivering in the storm, I thought about my babies. I thought, what if that was Zoe out there someday, stranded and scared, knocking on doors? What if some man looked through his peephole and decided she wasn't his problem? I unlocked the deadbolt. Sound, chain sliding, door opening, storm roaring in, can I help you? My voice came out rougher than I intended. 3 years of barely speaking to anyone will do that. The taller one looked up, and I swear I felt it in my chest, the sheer desperation in her eyes. Young eyes. Somebody's daughter. Sir, I'm so sorry to bother you, she said, voice shaking from cold or fear or both. Our car broke down about a mile from here, and we've been walking in this storm trying to find help. We need to use a phone. Please. The shorter one added, we've tried every house on this block. You're the first person who answered. Pause, let that land, every house on this block. I looked past them into the darkness, at the row of homes with their lights on, their warm interiors visible through curtains. Families inside. Safe. Separate. Not their problem. I'd become one of those people myself over the past few years, the kind who kept his head down, who didn't get involved, who'd learned that helping others was a luxury he couldn't afford. But standing there, looking at these two young women who could have been anybody's daughters, I felt something crack open in my chest. Some sealed-off place where I'd buried the man I used to be. The man Shanice had fallen in love with before ambition had hollowed me out. Come inside, I said, stepping back. Get out of this weather. Music shift, slightly warmer undertone emerges, the relief that washed over their faces was so complete, so profound, that I had to look away. When was the last time anyone had looked at me like I'd saved them? They stepped into my living room, dripping rainwater onto the floor, and I suddenly saw my home through their eyes, the sagging couch from the Goodwill, the wall where the paint was peeling, the stack of bills on the kitchen table I hadn't bothered to hide. The space heater in the corner that was doing its best to fight February. This was what I'd been reduced to. This was the man who'd once had business cards embossed with gold lettering. I'm Marcus, I said, grabbing the only 2 clean towels I had left from the bathroom. Let me get you something to dry off with. I'm Imani, the taller one said, accepting the towel like I'd handed her a treasure. This is my sister, Nia. We can't thank you enough. We were starting to think we'd have to sleep in the car. Nia wrapped the towel around her shoulders, still shivering. We're not from around here. We were looking at some property in the area, and the car just died. Narrator adds context, slight skepticism creeping in, property. In this neighborhood. I clocked that immediately, the way Imani shot her sister a look, sharp and quick. The way Nia's explanation had that practiced quality, like a story they'd agreed on beforehand. And their clothes. Even soaked, I could tell they were expensive. The kind of fabrics that don't come from department stores. Designer boots that probably cost more than my monthly rent. But I'd learned something in my fall from grace, everybody's got secrets. Everybody's got a story they're not telling. And pushing for truth when someone's vulnerable is a cruelty I'd had practiced on me enough to never inflict on others. Phone's in the kitchen, I said. Help yourself. Sound, dialing, phone static, frustration, Imani tried 3 times before giving up. Storm must have taken out the lines. Nia looked at her sister, then at me, and I watched something pass between them, some silent conversation I wasn't privy to. Fear. Calculation. Trust being measured. Look, I said, the words coming out before I'd fully thought them through. You can't go anywhere in this weather. The forecast said this storm's going to last all night. You're welcome to stay here until morning. Pause, 2 seconds, weight of offer, I watched them weigh their options, trust a strange man in a strange house, or brave a storm that sounded like it was trying to tear the sky apart. We don't want to impose, Imani said carefully, but I could hear the hope underneath. You're not. I gestured at the couch. It's not much, but it's dry and warm. I've got some blankets, maybe some instant ramen if you're hungry. It's not the Ritz, but, it's perfect, Nia interrupted, and the sincerity in her voice caught me off guard. Really? Thank you. Music shift, intimate, conversational warmth, so that's how I ended up making instant ramen at 10:30 p.m. on Valentine's Day for 2 strangers who'd wandered into my life through a storm. As I boiled water on my ancient stove, they sat at my kitchen table, wrapped in towels and blankets, looking around my small world with an attention that made me self-conscious. You live here alone? Imani asked, not prying, just making conversation. Yeah, I said, stirring the noodles. Just me. It must get lonely. Emotional shift, vulnerability emerging, I hadn't expected that. Hadn't expected this stranger to just, name it. The thing I spent every day trying not to acknowledge. Sometimes, I admitted, surprising myself with the honesty. But you get used to it. That was a lie. You never get used to loneliness. You just get better at carrying it. Nia pulled her blanket tighter. What do you do for work? I'm in construction. Was, anyway. Now I mostly take freelance jobs when I can get them. Carpentry, renovation work, whatever pays. You said was. What changed? Pause, deciding whether to go there. Maybe it was the storm. Maybe it was the way they looked at me, without judgment, just genuine curiosity. Maybe it was because I'd been carrying this weight alone for so long that it had started crushing me, and sometimes you just need to set it down in front of another human being and remember you're not invisible. I had my own company, I heard myself say. Read construction. We did commercial projects, office buildings, retail centers, mid-sized stuff. I built it from nothing, worked every hour God gave me, and then some. What happened to it? I lost it. Simple words for a complicated destruction. Business partner decided he wanted a bigger share. I wouldn't back down, so he forced me out, made sure I couldn't get work anywhere else in the industry. By the time the lawyers were done picking over the bones, there was nothing left. I set 3 bowls of ramen on the table, a feast by my current standards. But that's not the worst part, I continued, needing suddenly to say it all. The worst part is what it cost me before it even fell apart. Voice drops, intimate confession, I have 2 kids. Zoe and Caleb. They're 7 and 9 now, living in Denver with their mother. My ex-wife. She left me 3 years ago, and I can't even be angry about it because she was right to go. Imani leaned forward slightly. What do you mean? I mean I chose work over them every single day. Birthday parties, school plays, family dinners, I missed it all. I was too busy building a future for them to actually be there with them. I thought I was being a good father by providing, by securing their future. Turns out, what they needed was just, me. Present. Showing up. Emotion rising, controlled, Shanice, my ex, she tried telling me. For years, she tried. Said I was missing our children's childhood. But I didn't listen. I thought she didn't understand sacrifice, didn't understand what it took to build something from nothing as a black man in an industry that didn't want me there in the first place. Nia's eyes were bright with unshed tears. You were fighting for them. I was fighting for something, I said. But I'm not sure it was really for them. Maybe it was for me. For my ego. To prove I could make it, that I was somebody. Bitterness creeps in, and then I lost it all anyway. The business, the house, the wife. The only thing I wanted to keep, my kids, that's what the court said I couldn't have. Shanice got primary custody. I get them for a few weeks in the summer and alternating holidays. If I can afford the flights. I stared at my bowl of ramen, unable to meet their eyes. This summer's looking doubtful. Work's been slow, and the tickets are expensive. So I'll probably go a whole year without seeing my babies. Without hugging them, hearing them laugh, being their dad in any real way. Voice cracked slightly, Zoe started losing her teeth. Caleb made the soccer team. I know these things from 5-minute phone calls twice a week when their mom remembers to have them call me. I'm becoming a voice on the phone. A stranger to my own kids. The silence that followed felt like a presence in the room. Then Imani spoke, her voice soft but firm. You know what I hear in your story, Marcus? I looked up. I hear a man who's still fighting. Even after everything fell apart, even when it would have been easier to give up, you're still trying to be their father. That matters. They'll remember that. Pause, receiving kindness unexpectedly, I didn't trust myself to speak. It had been so long since anyone had seen past my failures to the intention underneath. So long since anyone had offered me grace. We talked through the night, the three of us. They told me about growing up in a close family, about their father who taught them the value of character and compassion. They were vague about details, never mentioned their last name, never said exactly where they were from, never explained what they were really doing in my neighborhood. But they listened. God, they listened like my story mattered. Like I mattered. Around 2 a.m., Nia said something I'll never forget. You know, Marcus, we've stayed in 5-star hotels, expensive resorts, places with room service and marble bathrooms. But I don't think I've ever felt as welcome as I do right here. I laughed, embarrassed. You're just being kind. No, Imani insisted. She's right. You opened your door to complete strangers in a storm. You shared what little you had, your space, your food, your story. You didn't have to do any of that. Most people didn't. I have kids, I said simply. If Zoe and Caleb were ever stranded somewhere, scared and cold, I'd hope someone would help them. I'd pray someone would open their door. Music shift, foreshadowing, subtle, something passed between the sisters then, another one of those silent conversations. Imani pulled out a business card from her wallet, somehow still intact despite the soaking. If you ever need anything, she said, pressing it into my hand. Anything at all. Please call this number. I glanced at it, elegant lettering, embossed, clearly expensive. But I was too tired to really register what it said. Thank you, I said, tucking it into my pocket. Sound, storm fading, morning birds emerging, the next morning dawned clear and cold, like the storm had scrubbed the world clean. I woke to find Imani and Nia already up, sitting at my kitchen table talking in low voices. They stopped when they saw me, but I caught the tail end of something, tell Dad. We had instant coffee, the cheap kind that tastes like regret, and shared the last of my bread for toast. Then I drove them to their car in my beat-up '08 Civic that sputtered and complained the whole way. Their vehicle was something else entirely, a sleek black sedan that probably cost more than I'd make in 5 years. It looked obscenely out of place on this broken street. I popped the hood, checked it over. Your alternator's shot. You'll need a tow. They called someone, not roadside assistance, I noticed, but a personal number, and within 20 minutes, a tow truck arrived. As they were about to leave, both sisters hugged me. Long, tight embraces that felt like goodbye and thank you and something else I couldn't name. You're a good man, Marcus Reed, Imani whispered. Don't forget that. And then they were gone, that black sedan loaded onto the truck, disappearing around the corner. I stood there on that broken street, watching them go, feeling the loneliness settle back onto my shoulders like a familiar coat. Music fades to minimal, desolate, the next 2 weeks were hard. Harder than usual, because I'd remembered what human connection felt like, and now its absence felt sharper. I threw myself into work, picked up a demolition gig that paid cash under the table, managed to catch up on the electric bill. But mostly, I thought about them. About Imani and Nia, about their kindness, about that business card I'd found in my jeans pocket after washing them and stuck on my bathroom mirror. I never looked at it closely. Never really registered the name embossed there. If I had, maybe I wouldn't have been so shocked when my doorbell rang at 10:30 on a Tuesday morning, and I opened it to find my life about to change forever. Sound, doorbell, door opening, music, complete shift, orchestral, building, standing on my porch was a man I'd only ever seen in news articles and business magazines. Tall, distinguished, wearing a suit that probably cost more than my car. Behind him, Imani and Nia. And behind them, 2 black SUVs with drivers waiting. My brain struggled to process what I was seeing. Mr. Reed, the man said, extending his hand with a warm smile. My name is David Okafor. I believe you've already met my daughters. Pause, world tilting, Okafor. David Okafor. Billionaire real estate developer. One of the wealthiest black men in America. The man who turned a single apartment building into a nationwide empire, who'd been featured on the cover of Forbes, who donated millions to rebuild communities like this one. I don't understand, I managed. Imani stepped forward, her eyes already shining with tears. We told him everything, Marcus. About the storm. About how you were the only one who helped us. About your story. Dad wanted to come sooner, Nia added. But we asked him to wait. We wanted to know more about you first. My legs felt unsteady. No more. What are you talking about? David Okafor's expression turned serious. Mr. Reed, my daughters told me something that broke my heart. They said they knocked on 17 doors that night. 17 homes with their lights on, families inside, people who looked through their peepholes and decided my daughters weren't their problem. Voice hardens with intensity, 17 people who chose safety over compassion. Who chose comfort over courage. He stepped closer. You almost became number 18. Pause, let the weight crush, but you didn't. When you had every reason to protect yourself, when you had nothing to gain and potentially something to lose, you opened your door. You shared what little you had. You treated my daughters with dignity and kindness. Sir, let me finish, he said gently. After that night, I had my team look into your background. I know about Reed Construction. I know about what your partner did to you. I know about the blacklisting, the custody battle, the struggle. Shame burned in my chest. My failures, laid bare before this titan of industry. I also know, he continued, that you're one of the most talented construction managers in this city. Your portfolio shows vision, integrity, and skill. Your former employees, I spoke to 17 of them, all said the same thing, you were the best boss they'd ever had. Fair. Honest. Present. My vision blurred. Mr. Reed, I'm not here to offer you charity. I'm here to offer you a job. Senior Project Director for Okafor Development's Community Revitalization Initiative. We're rebuilding neighborhoods like this one all over the country. I need someone who understands construction, who understands community, and who understands that buildings aren't just structures, they're homes. They're futures. Emotional breaking point approaching, the salary is $180,000 annually, plus benefits, plus performance bonuses. More than enough to relocate closer to your children and hire the best custody lawyer in Denver. My knees buckled. I actually stumbled, and David reached out to steady me. Why? The word came out broken. Why would you do this? Imani knelt beside me, taking my hand. Because when it mattered most, you chose compassion over fear. You chose to see us as human beings, not as problems to avoid. Nia joined her sister. And because Dad taught us that success means nothing if you don't use it to lift others. You lifted us that night, Marcus. Now let us lift you. Full emotional release, tears, overwhelm, I couldn't hold it anymore. 3 years of pain, of shame, of desperate loneliness came pouring out. I wept like a child on my doorstep, this powerful man's hand on my shoulder, these 2 young women holding my hands. I almost didn't answer the door, I sobbed. I almost walked away. I was so tired, so broke, so done. My hand was on the deadbolt, and I almost just ignored it. But you didn't, David said softly. When it mattered, you chose love. That choice, Marcus, that single choice, changes everything. Music, triumphant but earned, not cheap, he pulled me to my feet. There's one more thing. Okafor Development has a comprehensive family support program. We provide relocation assistance, educational scholarships for employees' children, family counseling, and legal support for custody matters. We believe that our employees' families are extensions of our family. I couldn't speak. Could barely breathe. Zoe and Caleb, Imani said gently. You could see them every day. Be there for soccer games and school plays and bedtime stories. Be the father you've been fighting to be, Nia finished. Narrator pulls back, reflective wisdom emerging. You know what broke me completely? It wasn't the job. It wasn't the money, though God knows I needed it. It wasn't even the thought of seeing my kids again. It was being seen. For 3 years, I'd been invisible. A failure. A cautionary tale. A name in a court document, a voice on a phone call twice a week. And these people, these strangers who'd become something more, they saw me. Not what I'd lost. Not what I'd failed at. But who I was when everything else was stripped away. They saw the man Shanice had fallen in love with before ambition had poisoned me. They saw the father Zoe and Caleb needed. They saw the person I'd forgotten I could be. I accept, I whispered. All of it. Thank you. Thank you. Music shifts, montage feeling, passage of time, 6 months. That's how long it took for my entire world to reconstruct itself. David Okafor didn't just give me a job, he gave me back my purpose. I moved to Denver 3 weeks after that conversation. Found an apartment 10 minutes from Shanice's house. Started my new position overseeing the renovation of a historic community center that would serve families just like mine had been, struggling, overlooked, forgotten. The custody lawyer David recommended was a bulldog. Within 2 months, we'd gone back to court. This time, I had stability. Income. Proximity. Presence. The judge granted joint custody. 50-50. My kids would spend half their time with me. Voice cracks with joy. The first night Zoe and Caleb slept in their new rooms in my apartment, I stood in the hallway and just listened to them breathe. Caleb's soft snoring. Zoe talking in her sleep about rainbows and puppies. I'd forgotten this. This everyday magic. This ordinary miracle of being a present father. Scene, present day, full circle, now, 6 months after that storm, I stood in my new office overlooking downtown Denver. On my desk, family photos. Zoe's artwork from school. Caleb's soccer schedule that I'd never miss again. My phone buzzed. A text from Imani, family dinner at our place this Sunday. Mom's making her famous jollof rice. You better come hungry. I smiled, typing back, wouldn't miss it. Family dinner is sacred. And I meant it. Because I'd learned something in that storm, in that choice to open my door when it would have been easier to keep it closed. I'd learned that who you are when you have nothing, that's who you really are. The man I'd been before, the one who'd built empires but missed birthdays, who'd climbed ladders but lost his family, that wasn't strength. That was fear dressed up as ambition. Wisdom, grounded, passing the torch. Real strength is opening your door when you're afraid. Real courage is giving when you have nothing left. Real success is measured in bedtime stories and soccer games and ordinary Tuesdays where you're just present. David Okafor told me something that first day that's become my North Star. Character is what you choose when no one's watching and you have nothing to gain. That night in the storm, I'd chosen compassion over comfort. And that choice, that single, terrified, uncertain choice, had given me back everything I'd lost. Not because I deserved it. Not because I'd earned it through grinding or hustling or any of that. But because kindness has a way of finding its way back to you when you least expect it. When you've given up hope that anything will ever change. Final scene, present moment, Sunday came. I picked up Zoe and Caleb, buckled them into my car, a new one, nothing fancy, but reliable and mine, and drove to the Okafor estate. As we pulled up the long driveway, Zoe pressed her face to the window. "Dad, this house is like a castle." "Wait till you taste Mrs. Okafor's jollof rice, kiddo," I said. "That's the real treasure." Caleb looked at me with those serious 9-year-old eyes. "Dad? Are these people your friends?" "Emotional, honest, yeah, buddy. They're family. But they're not our family." I pulled into the circular drive, put the car in park, and turned to look at my children, my whole world, my reason for everything. Family isn't just blood, Caleb. Family is the people who choose you. Who see you when you're at your worst and still believe in your best. The Okafors chose me when I had nothing to offer them. That's family. Imani and Nia came running out before we'd even fully stopped, opening the car doors and pulling my kids into hugs like they'd known them forever. "You must be Zoe. Your dad talks about you all the time. Caleb, I heard you made the soccer team. That's amazing." And watching my children be embraced by these people who'd become my family, I felt it, that full circle moment when everything makes sense. Music, gentle, hopeful, resolved, that storm lasted only a few hours. But what it brought to my doorstep, connection, redemption, family, purpose, that will last forever. Because I'd learned the most important lesson of my life: you never know what's on the other side of your door until you choose to open it. And sometimes, when you're brave enough to let strangers in from the storm, they bring miracles with them. Final beat, direct address, to every man listening to this who feels invisible, who's fighting alone, who's been knocked down so many times you're not sure you can get up again. I want you to hear this: you are not failing. You are in a fight. Your character matters, even when no one's watching. Your presence matters more than your presence. And somewhere, someone needs exactly what you have to offer, even if what you have feels like nothing. Open your door. Choose compassion. Stay in the fight. The storm doesn't last forever. And sometimes, on the other side of the rain, there's a family waiting to choose you back. Fade, rain sounds returning, then fading to silence. My name is Marcus Reed. And this is how a storm gave me back my life.